A dust-colored dawn, wind rolling low over the prairie grass. The story begins with an old rancher's hand trembling as he drops a single silver coin, 50 cents, into the palm of a trader. Around him, laughter rises like crows. "You can't even feed a dog on that, Jesse," someone calls. But Jesse Rowland only looks down at the tiny, bony creature tethered to a post. A horse no bigger than a mule foal, ribs showing, eyes full of apology. He knows pity when he sees it, in himself most of all. At the edge of Clayton's auction yard, Jesse trades half a loaf of bread and his last coin for the animal. The horse is small enough to fit beneath his arm, the reins frayed and useless. He leads it home through dust, hearing echoes of his late wife's laughter. How Clara May used to believe every lost thing still has a use. The tiny horse stumbles often. Children point from porches. Old men spit and shake their heads. But that night, under lamplight, Jesse brushes the creature gently, whispering, "You and me, Pip. We'll make do." Weeks pass. Town gossip swells. The saloon mocks the poor fool who bought a toy horse. Sheriff Cole Braddock warns him to sell it and buy feed instead. But Jesse can't. Pip follows him like a shadow, and in the quiet of dusk, the ranch begins to hum again, the way it used to before Clara died. Jesse begins to speak aloud again, though no one's around to hear. Pip listens. Sometimes, Lena Dawson, the new teacher, rides by on her way to town. She watches Jesse training the little horse to drag small loads, how he kneels beside it instead of commanding. A slow, wordless connection begins. Two lonely souls watching each other from a distance, connected by gentleness. A harsh winter sweeps through. Feed runs low. Jesse falls ill for days, but Pip refuses to leave the porch. One night, as snow howls, Jesse wakes to find the tiny horse nudging open the barn door, dragging a burlap sack of feed it somehow found by scent. He laughs weakly, tears steaming on his cheeks. "You stubborn little thing. Guess you're worth more than 50 cents now." That winter passes and something shifts. By spring, the land begins to heal, the first green blades through cracked soil. Lena visits one day, carrying biscuits. Pip trots between them, comically proud, breaking the silence. Their laughter feels like sunlight after years of storm. When Jesse tries to sell his small crop at market, the townsfolk still mock him. They call Pip a circus pet. The humiliation cuts deep, but Lena's quiet voice that night stays with him. Don't let small minds tell big hearts what they're worth. He looks out over the fields, Pip grazing beside him, and swears softly, "We'll prove them wrong. Little one." The prairie hums in the wind. The stars above seem closer than ever. A man, a tiny horse, and a promise hang between earth and heaven. Small things in a big, unkind world, daring to hope anyway. Years passed and the ranch changed with them. Pip grew strong, compact but sturdy, a creature carved from quiet resilience. Jesse's hair silvered at the temples, his hands hardened again from honest work. Folks still laughed when they saw him training that undersized horse to pull a plow or haul buckets. But some began to pause before joining in. There was something steady about the sight, something that made mockery feel small. One summer morning, clouds swelled black and low. The first thunder rolled like cannon fire across the plains. By noon, the creek that ran behind the town burst its banks. Livestock screamed. Fences snapped like matchsticks. The flood took everything without choosing sides, rich or poor, proud or kind. Jesse was up on his roof, water licking the porch rail when he heard shouting. Sheriff Braddock, half drowned, was stranded on a floating wagon. His horse had bolted. No one could reach him. Jesse tied a rope around his waist, the other end to Pip's saddle. The little horse trembled at the water's edge, but Jesse crouched low, speaking in a steady voice. "We've come too far to stop now, partner. You and me, we do the impossible, remember?" Then he stepped into the current. Pip followed. The river was wild, brown water twisting with branches and fence wire, but Pip swam forward, ears flat, nostrils flaring. The rope stretched tight, and Jesse could feel every ounce of the horse's will through it. Together they reached the wagon. The sheriff clung to the rope as Pip turned and fought the current back. When they stumbled onto the bank, soaked and shivering, the town had gathered in stunned silence. The same mouths that once spat laughter now whispered awe. Sheriff Braddock knelt beside the horse and said hoarsely, "That 50-cent miracle just saved my life." Word spread. The story of the tiny hero horse crossed county lines, carried on telegraph wires, and whispered in saloons. Reporters came with notepads and cameras, but Jesse sent them away. "Just spell his name right," he said. "It's Pip, not Pony." Lena came to see him often after that. She'd bring flowers for Clara's grave and stay for coffee. Their conversations were never loud, just simple exchanges that stretched into something deeper. He would glance at her across the table, at how the sunlight caught the edge of her hair, and think that maybe life hadn't forgotten him after all. Pip stood between them in the evenings as they fed the chickens, his mane catching the wind. It was never a fiery love, never dramatic. It was quiet, earned, slow, like water smoothing stone. Months turned to years. Jesse and Lena began teaching the town children how to care for animals, how to listen before commanding. Pip became the heart of those lessons. The children brushed his coat, tied ribbons in his mane, and laughed at his proud, short steps. The same people who once mocked now tipped their hats when Jesse rode by. But peace never lasted long in the West. 5 summers later came the drought, harder than any remembered. The sun baked the soil to powder. Wells gave up. Men fought over water rights. Jesse watched his small ranch wilt again under heaven's silence. Yet Pip still followed him across the fields, never complaining, never slowing. Then one night, lightning split the sky. Within hours, the prairie was fire. The wind carried sparks like fireflies, and flames rolled toward the town. Jesse didn't hesitate. He threw a wet blanket over Pip's back and rode toward the inferno. Smoke stung his eyes, but he could still hear the animals screaming in the pens. Pip lunged through fire, the small horse that once couldn't pull a barrel now driving through walls of heat to open the gates. Cattle burst free, running toward the river. Jesse's coat caught a spark. Pip stumbled but kept going. The world burned, but neither stopped. When dawn came, the fire had broken. Ash covered the earth. Townsfolk found Jesse collapsed beside the riverbank, Pip's body pressed against his. Both were alive, barely. Lena knelt, sobbing quietly, stroking Pip's muzzle as he blinked weakly but still lifted his head. Weeks later, the town began to rebuild. The fire had taken homes but not hearts. They carved new fences, planted new seeds, and raised a small stable on Jesse's land. Above the entrance hung a sign carved by Lena, "Roland's Rescue for every creature that was once laughed at." Children came from miles around to see the horse who saved a sheriff and braved a fire. Pip grew old in that stable, silver hairs shining along his neck. Jesse would sit beside him at dusk, brushing his coat, whispering, "50 cents, huh? Guess we fooled 'em all." When Pip finally passed, the whole town turned out to bury him under the willow near Clara's old garden. Jesse placed a rough stone at the grave and carved it with his knife. Worth more than gold. Years later, Jesse, now an old man with trembling hands and quiet eyes, sat on the porch watching the sun sink beyond the plains. The wind carried children's laughter from the stable. Lena's voice called from inside, warm and familiar. He looked toward the horizon and spoke softly, as if to the listener sitting beside him. Folks think miracles come loud, but most don't. Sometimes they arrive small, hardly seen, hardly believed. Just like that 50-cent horse that taught me what staying power really means. He smiled faintly, his voice thinning with the breeze. So if the world ever tells you you're too small to matter, just keep walking, keep giving. Sooner or later, the world will catch up to your worth. The prairie wind whispered through the grass, carrying the scent of rain and new beginnings. The camera lingers on the willow tree swaying under the sunset. The old ranch bathed in gold, and for a moment the world feels still, grateful, and whole again.